Hey, welcome to Lab the Podcast. We are grateful to be back. It's National Human Trafficking Awareness Month, and I'm grateful to get some time with Kristen Bracy. Kristen is the founder of iRISE Florida, a nonprofit organization that works for economic justice and empowerment of survivors of violence and exploitation. Kristen is also the director of the Tampa Bay SAFE Alliance and a former associate director of the Arizona State University Office of Sex Trafficking, Intervention, and Research. Kristen, thank you for, in the midst of all the things you're doing, making time for a conversation like this.
Thank you so much for having me. It's truly an honor.
Yeah, well, the honor is ours. It's National Human Trafficking Awareness Month, and every January we try to pause everything that V3 is doing and just turn our attention to the tragic space of human trafficking and what's happening to people and people in our city, but also to the extraordinary work that's happening through people like you who are called to this work and called to stand on the front lines. So the honor truly is ours. Thank you for your work, and you're doing this work on multiple fronts. And so we'll get into the SAFE Alliance. We'll talk about the SAFE Alliance. And I also want to talk about iRISE and specifically the issue of economic justice. We were just talking off camera about the reality of what it costs to care for your family, to move ahead, to just stay above water, especially in a city like Tampa. So we'll get into both of those issues, but I want to start with just how you found yourself in this particular work. It's a sacrifice. It's a space that's emotionally really hard to be in, and you know that better than we do. But you give up a lot economically, you give up a lot emotionally, you give up a lot to fight on behalf of others. And that fight's taking place in a lot of issues, but this one became yours. How did it become the fight that you were willing to sacrifice for?
Well, I got into this work, I would say about 14 years ago. And I had just graduated from college and I went to a conference. And at that conference, it was actually Passion in Georgia.
Yep.
And I was at a Passion conference and they had this missions expo. And there was an organization there that was talking about the issue of human trafficking. And I had never heard about this issue prior to that. And they had a walkthrough exhibit and they were sharing about the work that they were doing around the world. So we were still talking about human trafficking like it was a foreign issue at this point, that it happened out there. It's not something that happens necessarily here. And so I just remember sitting there, walking through the exhibit, sitting there, listening to these stories and just feeling so convicted. I just felt like that moment, I heard the voice of God basically say, this is going to be the rest of your life. And prior to that, I wanted to be something different every week. I was, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I knew I wanted to help people, but I also was like, maybe I could be a marine biologist, but I can't be on a boat for a month. I want to chase hurricanes. I want to be a backup dancer for Britney Spears. I don't know. I wanted to be something different every week. And it was kind of a running joke among my friends and family. And I just remember at that point being like, I heard God say, this will be the rest of your life. I just looked around at everybody getting up and walking away and everyone was moved. But the image was so profound to me. I just thought, I will never walk away from this. I can't, how can we just go on with our life knowing that people are being forced to exchange sex or to work for nothing and are being forced to do these things, and they're being tortured and traumatized over and over and over again. Children, adults, families, entire families. I just thought, surely, this is not happening today. So the first thing that I did was when I got back to Tampa, I looked around at what was going on. And the only organization I could find actually worked in labor trafficking. So I started volunteering and had the honor of helping individuals who were being recovered from labor trafficking seek justice, which was really wonderful. But I watched the woman who ran that program was essentially a volunteer herself. And I thought, if I'm going to make this the rest of my life, I need to go be educated. I need to understand there is no pathway for a career in anti-trafficking at that point. So it led me across the country. I went to a master's program at Arizona State. I got a master's in social justice and human rights. And while I was there, a professor there had just opened the Office of Sex Trafficking Intervention Research. And so I couldn't get her to respond to my email. And that's been a running joke for many years as well. So I just enrolled in her class. And then I became a student researcher, a volunteer. And then I became a part-time student researcher. And then eventually I created the first full-time staff position in her office and became the associate director. I went on to get a master's of social work so that I could work directly with clients and help them heal. And I started working as a researcher and researching the issue of human trafficking from a 360 perspective. The demand, who's buying, what type of behaviors are they looking for? The victim, what is their experience? Who are the victims? How are they being recruited, controlled, exploited? Evaluating programs that serve victims so that we can see, are they working? And also working with police departments in Nevada and in Arizona and looking at trafficker typology and who are they and how are they recruiting? How are they moving money? Are they recruiting kids or adults? And how does all that work? And to really understand this issue, at a deep level. And at the same time, I started running a group for individuals who had been trafficked and who were arrested for a charge of prostitution. So I ran a therapeutic group for about 6 years in that program. So it all started, at a conference as a student, and it all started with, I feel like, a conviction and a calling that I could never actually walk away from. And I never did. I just kept going.
Yeah. Wow. We'll keep coming back to that theme of justice. We're writing a symphony right now with a composer, and it's based in Isaiah's prophecy. And you cannot get 4 sentences through Isaiah without the word justice and without there being kind of a disturbed undertone because the people of God are not living justly. And there's a heartbroken, just kind of a lament that's hanging in the air because there's injustice, and it's an area that we need to pay attention to, even within the church, and have an honest conversation about. So it's cool to me that as a young person at a conference, it was justice that part of God's character where your call particularly came. Did you grow up in Tampa? Was this home?
It was for a while. I'm from Texas and then Louisiana, excuse me, and then Florida. So
Okay.
I spent from 97 to 2012, so a large chunk of my life. But it's interesting that you say that because I do feel like, in all of us, we resonate with some aspect of God and Christ, and mine has always been justice. I feel like that's how it's God's love for the broken and for the oppressed. And that has always been, how I feel like that's what God gave me. That's what drives me. It's what keeps me up at night. It's what makes me angry. It's what spurs me to action is when I see something that's unjust. And it's always been the deep connection that I feel to Christ and to God is his love of justice.
Yeah. Were you, as a kid, did you stand up for people? I mean, when you go back and look, were you maybe, I don't know if you have siblings or not, but were you that person as a young person?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm the youngest of 3 girls. And I do feel like in my life, I was the one that had to have it together, and kind of be the strong one. But also, I laugh. I think about one of my birthday parties as a kid. I had a pool party and everybody's having a blast and they're in the pool. And my one friend was just not having it. He did not want to be there and he was miserable. I can't even remember why at this point. And I sat next to him the entire time. I wouldn't move. My mom was so mad. She's like, "This is your party. Go have fun." And I was like, I can't have fun if he's not having fun.
Yeah.
I don't know why. That's just,
I love that.
it's weird.
Well, we started the podcast with this whole podcast idea started saying we want to find people whose lives and work give us a glimpse of the life and beauty of the gospel, that there's something beautiful that God is doing in the world in so many different places. And we fail to pay attention. We fail to see it. And So it's cool to sit here and listen to you tell your story and say, no, God, these things are God at work. And probably for all of you who are listening, we all have those similar things that we paid attention to growing up. And you could find us writing poetry or writing music or caring about justice, or there's something that God's put in us. And if it gets nurtured, and if there's enough courage, enough support, to allow that thing to blossom, something really beautiful can come about. But it takes a fight too, and you have that. I see that in you, that you have an edge to fight and to do the hard thing. And we get to interview the director of Cabrini. There's a movie about this just force of a woman who stood up orphanages and care hospitals to care for people in Chicago. And I remember just being stunned by her character and who God calls to go out and break down walls. You stood up an organization, which it's one thing to sit next to somebody at a pool and be that advocate. It's another thing to go build maybe a role as faculty within a university system, but that's already built. It's another thing to create an organization and to say there's a gap, and to see the gap and to build it. What was it that you saw that made you say it's worth it to fight for building a completely new thing to meet that gap? And iRISE did just that.
Well, thank you. First of all, that's incredibly kind and humbling. And it has been the hardest thing. You don't think when you go into it that it's like, how hard could it be, right? Like, people care, they're going to help, it's like, yeah, it is. It has absolutely been the hardest thing, but it is the most rewarding thing. And again, I felt like it was the next step in my calling. I don't feel like it was from me. I feel like it was from God. And I'm so blessed to have been, don't you ever just feel like, wow, like what an honor to be, God picked me, how cool is that? So it was actually in that prostitution diversion program I was sharing with you about. I, every Tuesday for 6 years, ran a 90-minute group on trauma and abuse in a prostitution diversion program in the city of Phoenix. People were arrested and court ordered to be there. So they were not there by choice. And these are individuals who are actively in the life. So they're being trafficked. And they were going to this program in order to avoid going to jail.
Sure.
But every week for 90 minutes, we got to have a conversation about the super enlightening, or just such a positive topic, trauma and abuse. But it was one of the only places in their lives that someone was asking how they're doing and actually cared, and was talking about things like family dynamics and healthy versus unhealthy relationships and boundaries and moving out of survival mode and the impact of trauma on the brain and the body, things that they would never have these conversations anywhere else. And so it really was such a powerful time. But one of the things that I kept hearing over and over and over again for 6 years, and it took me a long time for it to dawn on me, but I kept hearing the same thing. I want to get out of the life, which is, of course, human trafficking, or I have gotten out of the life, but I can't get a job that pays a livable wage. So I can't get out of the neighborhood where I was trafficked in the first place. I'm around all the same people, places, and things. I can't get my kids back from the system because I can't demonstrate that I can provide a safe and stable living environment. I might have dropped out of school, so I have maybe an 8th grade education. I have never had a legitimate job, or I have large gaps in work history. And so my opportunities are so limited. I worked with a survivor in Phoenix. She was a survivor leader, but she worked at Pizza Hut as a delivery driver for 5 years. And for 5 years, her store tried to promote her because she's amazing. She's their hardest worker. But her criminal record, corporate, would continue to deny her and deny her, deny her. So she left. The only job she could get was Dunkin' Donuts. Same experience. And so it's this person who is giving everything to try and have a different life, who is a leader in the community, giving back and helping rescue other women from trafficking. But she can't make ends meet because she can only get a job at a fast food restaurant, and she can't even be promoted to store manager after years of dedication. And it's that same cycle over and over again. And I started to realize this is not just a social justice issue. This is an economic justice issue. And if we're going to help people get out of violent and exploitative situations or prevent them from being sucked back into them, because research shows it takes an average of 5 to 8 attempts for a person to successfully exit the life, 7 attempts for a person to successfully leave a domestic violence relationship. One of the biggest reasons for that is economic need. If we're not creating better pathways for people to get out and stay out, then we're kind of a part of the problem. You know what I mean? We're just perpetuating a cycle of re-exploitation. So we have to prevent it on one end from people ever being pushed into this situation. And then we also have to prevent it on the back end of people being re-exploited. And so it finally dawned on me, and I looked around and thought, is anybody going to do anything about this? I'm just a social worker. I'm a researcher. I'm a social worker. And there was nothing. And so that's what led me to start iRISE, was this idea of, it's to open those doors and to create that pathway and to remove barriers for survivors who are ready to create life change and who are working so hard. They just can't get over some of these structural barriers. So if we can open a window, if we can help remove that barrier and advocate for them, if we can give them the skills that they desperately need and access to education and training, and if we can be the individuals who create those relationships with businesses along their desired career path and not tell them what they can do, but let them choose, some of them for the first time in their life, what they actually want to do, what makes their heart sing, what do they feel called to do. And then we help to bridge the gap there and build relationships with businesses that would hire them and maybe overlook their criminal record or work with us as we're working to get it expunged. Or if we could just help remove some of those barriers, we could actually prevent people from being trafficked, and we can help with this help break generational cycles of violence and abuse for them and their children, and to create a better future for them.
Yeah. I love that iRISE came out of the work that you were already doing, and the ability to listen carefully to people who were trying to find their way out of that life and had maybe made 1 or 2 or 3 attempts, and your ability to learn in that environment and God's preparation, bringing you to the point where you go, okay, I see that thing. Why isn't something being done? We just got to talk to Brent Woody about the expungement issue, and I can see how working together, right? It's great if we can get your record expunged. We've got to remove that barrier. But then if I don't have the confidence, if I don't have the clarity of my gifting and my calling, if I've never had anybody mentor or bring me to the point where I can successfully interview, there's still so many barriers to entering in and getting sustainable income. And that's another thing. If you mentioned Dunkin' Donuts, and this is where the justice part, I think we have to be honest. We've given resources to Heart Dance and to some of these incredible organizations that are going into strip clubs. We're working with people who the allure is somebody comes and says, well, I'll provide for you. I will give you a path that pays you X amount, or you can barely not even survive by trying to scrape by working at Dunkin' Donuts. And if I have a child, the tragedy and the heartbreak is, as a dad, even, I know, like, if I am pushed to the very edge and I have to decide what I will do to provide for my kids, I'm going to provide for my kids. And all of us will do that. And if the only path available for me to do that is at my own harm, I'm still going to do that. And I think for us not to speak honestly and openly about that, we can't even get to the justice part. And so I love the work that you're doing. If somebody met you and said, "Hey, what's the mission statement of iRISE?" The 2 words that you use are so important in there. Just give us that mission statement, because I want you to hear this. Your organization works in this very, very specific area that's deeply, deeply important.
Well, I feel like, our mission statement is full of a lot of jargon. We promote social and economic justice for individuals who have survived violence and exploitation through creative partnerships and a pathway to upward mobility. But for me, like, what it boils down to is we help women rebuild their lives and gain financial independence and have a life worth living. Yeah. That's really what it boils down to for us. Yeah. It's what you're saying is so poignant, because I've worked with survivors who have had to make those very choices. I mean, and traffickers know that, and they use children as a tool, you know, as a tool to keep that person in a violent or exploitative situation. And one of the conversations we're constantly having with survivors is survivors carry a lot of shame. Survivors that I have worked with carry a lot of shame about choices they feel like they made. And so we do have a lot of conversations about agency. If you have the choice between one bad thing and another, and you choose the thing that you feel like is the lesser of the two evils, was that really choice? And I think people don't understand that nuance, especially those that think like a person chooses to be in the strip club, they choose to be in a life of prostitution. Well, think about what their other choice was. You know what I mean? Or is it really a choice if, like, as you said, if I could go and make minimum wage, which is insulting, or if I can, have to be exploited, or if this person, if I trusted this person who said that they would take care of me, and be tortured every day, essentially, in order to survive. That's the reality. That's the choices that some individuals in our community, more than you would think, have to make.
Yeah.
And it is unjust. So for us, I used to think, when I started this work, that my mission was human trafficking. And then I started to realize, like, my mission is violence against people.
Yeah.
It's exploitation against people. It's a human using another human for their gain. That's not the fabric of who we were created to be. It goes against everything. And that's the thing that makes me so angry and drives me to action. So for us, it's just helping people to rebuild their lives and to find hope and to have a life worth living. And that's really the crux of it. We try not to be prescriptive. When women come through our program, we ask them what they dream to do. And sometimes it's the first time that they're ever thinking about that. And what a luxury, like we take that for granted to think about what we want or to take steps towards something that makes our heart sing.
Yeah.
And we don't always look at that as a luxury, but it is. And so we help them dream, and then we go help them get connected to the education and the employment along their career path. And it's clunky sometimes because we're all diverse. We want to do different things, And so, but that, we're just like, by golly, we're going to just, whatever you want to do, we will help you do it. And we'll forge partnerships, and it'll have to happen organically, but it's worth it. It's better.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you. I think even in the Christian community, we hear words like justice, and sometimes, and we have to be careful about this, we think, well, justice is getting what you deserve, right? Like, and so that it all shakes out, because, right, like in somebody's story, and that is not how biblical vision of justice is. Much more tied to righteousness, which we even then get that twisted and think, well, that means like a certain list of things we're to do and not do. And it's really, no, everything's set right. Like this idea of shalom and universal flourishing and delight. My kids are good, your kids are good. My neighbor is good, your neighbor is good. Mm-hmm. And that ability to see each other as a thou, not as an it, not as a you or an other, but to see the dignity of another person. And we're having this conversation about exploitation and violence against people. I would just say, like, we all need to pay attention, because the creep of that vision is not, I mean, it is in these really, really tragic places, but our kind of callousness to the way we see people, it's on our doorstep in every turn. And that's what makes this issue so egregious, so acutely painful, is that the way we look at the Pizza Hut driver can be really dismissive and demeaning. And no wonder we're taking advantage of people, and people are being exploited. There isn't justice in our streets. And the vision of God is that Tampa would be a just city, that things would be right before God. And it takes people stepping into that call. iRISE is doing part of that through your courageous work. You also sit at the table with incredible people. Brent Woody's one of them. Amazing people, heroes in our city who are doing that work talk a little bit about the SAFE Alliance and where that idea came from and how it is working in Tampa Bay. Because I think a lot of people have probably heard of Created. Many people have heard of Created, which is a beautiful thing. And there's great work being done. But there's more people hearing about iRISE now, and we'll make sure that that keeps happening. But a lot of people are unaware that there is a really coordinated strategic effort. So talk a little bit about SAFE Alliance. Where did the idea come from, and then what's happening in Tampa?
Absolutely. And that's actually by design, because the SAFE Alliance is almost like a non-entity. It is not an organization. It is an alliance of organizations and businesses and faith communities and individuals who come together for the good of the movement and to do something that together that we could never do apart. And I agree with you. I have the utmost respect for Brent Woody and the work that he does and Created and the work that they do, and every organization that is a member of the Alliance and is not are absolutely essential. And I think the thing that's so beautiful about the SAFE Alliance is that it is an opportunity for us to come together, to form partnerships, to know one another on a professional and personal level, to trust one another and to support each other and champion each other's work, and to build upon each other's work together to help meet needs and fill gaps, and also to turn our attention away from, all of us in the organizational spaces, we're going down a lane, we're doing the boots on the ground work. And it's hard. There's so much of it to go around, unfortunately, that it's hard to kind of pick your head up and look at the 30,000-foot view and of a more macro view and to say, okay, we're all doing incredible work, but none of us are ending human trafficking. It's not possible to do that on our own. So we have to come together and coordinate. If we look at ourselves as part of a movement, how do we move as one? And when we do that, when we support each other, when we know each other, when we're in communication with one another, when we're collaborating with one another, now we're moving the needle towards combating human trafficking in Tampa Bay, which, there's a lot of debate. Will we ever end human trafficking? There's sin in the world. The world is broken. Will there never be brokenness? No. However, we can do a lot to make sure that trafficking is not profitable in our community. We can educate people and reduce demand. We can help prevent it by meeting the needs of the people in our community and being good neighbors and noticing people, to your point, about treating people with dignity and respect and viewing people as human beings and as God's masterpiece instead of as property or a commodity to be bought or to be possessed. And we can do that so much better when we work as one. And that's really what the SAFE Alliance is. We see the SAFE Alliance as a servant to the movement. So that's why you don't know about us very much, because our job is to be in the background and to be underneath and to serve the movement that's happening. And it's so, to go back just a bit, because I think it's poignant for iRISE and for all of our organizations and also the SAFE Alliance. We talk about this as injustice and, the violence and the exploitation of it. My colleague and I were just talking about this the other day, that it's, a lot of times Christians worry about the concept of hell after life. You know what I mean? But there's so much hell here in ways that hopefully most people never experience. And so I think one of the things that's so powerful about the work that we're doing individually and as a community is that we're bringing pieces of heaven to earth. Yeah. That's the goal. You know what I mean? It's like for individuals who have experienced so much hell, that we could be in partnership with God to just be a little piece of heaven touching earth. You know what I mean? There's nothing more powerful than that. So I think that's what's so beautiful about the SAFE Alliance. If you look at it as if we're all, different parts of one body. That's really the anti-trafficking movement. We focus on economic justice and helping with employment and education and financial literacy. Brent Woody is like pioneering nationally on human trafficking expungement and changing people's lives, thousands of people's lives through expungement. Created is providing a home and Selah freedom for people who are just exiting the situation. Safe Families for Children are taking care of children while women are getting well. Heart Dance is out there in the street working with people who are actively in the life and trying to give them hope for a better future. We have survivor leaders in the community like Kim Figueroa and Talisia and so many more who are who have taken what has happened to them and are using it as a beacon of light to get other people out and to help others. I mean, we have just the most robust, amazing anti-trafficking community, but we're all one body. And I think that's what's so beautiful about the SAFE Alliance is the SAFE Alliance is the whole, it's the body. And it's, I think, if we think about it in terms of the gospel, it's like, we're each other's neighbors. We're better together as the church, the big C,
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think it's really cool. It's a good moment, right? This podcast reaches, I think, 500 cities or something. Riley will know the stats, but it's people all over the world and all over our country, but a lot of listeners in Tampa. And I think Tampa, we can be really proud of Tampa. Yeah, if you think about the work of pastors in churches, day in and day out, and congregations who are turning their vision up and really rightly aligning their loves and their desires, that's happening all over our city, and it's a beautiful thing. And there's practitioners like Brent Woody and all of the A-list folks that you just mentioned that are doing really incredible work. There is beautiful work happening in Tampa in this space. And I think you've seen in the years, even in the last 9 years that we've been here, there's been a strategic effort and a successful effort to keep moving towards greater justice and a wholeness in our city, which is a beautiful thing. There's a lot of work to do. I want to ask you, this might be controversial a bit, but I want to get your opinion on it from the work that you did in Arizona, also the work you've done here with survivors. I drive around our city and I think about the industry, even just that's very out in front of people. And like strip clubs, you can go in any direction. And when we first moved into the city, we would drive to our kids' school. And literally on the way to school, we're having to have conversations about like, well, this is what that place is. It was just kind of a part of the fabric of our city. And I'm not an advocate often of like legislating against certain things, but I do think that it would be amazing if there was a day where demand reduction, right? Like you go to, unfortunately, some cities where industry has just changed. And you go, man, we used to go to that city and there were auto factories or there were timber mills. And in a different context, you go, those things are gone. And I wonder if there would be a day that you could come to Tampa and go down Dale Mabry and you go, yeah, there used to be, this whole street used to be strip clubs. And that industry is just gone. I think like that. I have daughters and I think, I have a young son. I think, wouldn't it be wonderful if if that wasn't a part of the fabric of our city? I say that, I think like that. And then I do have good friends and people in conversation that say, this is a part of life. And they say, actually, by taking those things away, you create more problems and you drive things underground. And you shouldn't hope for those things to not be a part of the fabric of your city because it's just going to be the way it is. What is your opinion on that? Like working with predominantly women who are in that industry and that part of it, is there a correlation, or do you see an industry like that and say, no, the trafficking issue, the exploitation issue is one thing. And then this other area of commerce, that is a free and healthy part of an economy. And the two can coexist, or the two are separate conversations. How do you see that?
Ooh, yeah, that is a complicated question. So I have so many thoughts and I'm going to try to organize them. I will say that, yes, we have found that when things shut down, like for instance, a Backpage used to be, our office did so much research on Backpage because Backpage was this third party seller, basically like a Craigslist. You could buy a couch, you could buy a cat, or you could buy a person. They had a very robust adult section and lots of, trafficking just was rampant. And when that shut down, it didn't end trafficking. It just pushed it into the farther reaches of the internet. You know what I mean? So it made it actually harder to detect and to protect people. And so that's an unintended consequence of trying to stop the 100-headed hydra. You know what I mean? And I think that strip clubs are another example of that. My heart of hearts says the only reason that those things exist is because there's demand for them. Yeah. And so if we can change the heart of people, which I think is probably the hardest thing to do, then those things wouldn't exist. I think advocates for things like that, their point is if there are no options for an individual, and you take that away, then that person is even more desperate. And so I think the bigger conversation, of course, is the hardest one. We talk about advocates for the Nordic model or even like legalizing prostitution. And they make the, example of, well, abroad, it's legalized. And because of that, there's healthcare involved and, all of these things, these checks and balances. But at the same time, when you look at who are those individuals who are involved in that industry, it's not women who are from that country. It's immigrants. So it's still preying on the vulnerable, people who don't have better options. So for me, the real problem is, why is that the best option we have for people, right? Yeah. Like, why is and if you think about it, I mean, it's cultural. We use the human body to sell hamburgers, to sell, cars. There's restaurants that capitalize on the female body, right? And that's how they promote, come buy our wings, come eat our wings. But really, you're there to objectify somebody. And so we commodify the human body. And because of that, culturally, we have created an acceptance of it, that it's okay. We're subliminally teaching boys that it's okay to objectify women. We're subliminally teaching women that it's okay to be objectified, or that your body is the thing that is your value. And it's so much bigger. It's these cultural norms that we've created that enable this to happen. So for me, then the justice side of it is how is this the best that we have for people, the only option that we have for people? And I really think that is where we have to focus our energy. I think, this is incredibly controversial, but I think that strip clubs, some of those strip clubs are not just in the business of women. Yeah. Those are often a front for a lot of other things that are going on. And so I think, there are some wonderful minds in this town that would love to completely eradicate the strip clubs, on that one particularly main street. But there's so much might and forces that are behind it, I think, that would make that difficult. But for me, it's, I think our focus should be, how do we reduce vulnerabilities so that there's no one to staff those places? And how do we change the hearts of people that people wouldn't want to go there? Yeah. And that's the real challenge.
Yeah. That's right. Thank you for saying it. That's where I was hoping to learn from you, because I love what you just said. If we can reduce vulnerability and we can provide better opportunities, we can have a different imagination about what's possible, and we can work hard to change hearts, right? Not just change hearts like from a head level, but like, I will put a new heart in you. Like, this is the hope of the gospel. This is what happened to me with drug enforcement, just being around drug enforcement and watching. It's just futile. Like, you're never going to solve that problem unless you transform hearts and give people as C.S. Lewis said, baptize the imagination. And what we begin to yearn for and desire and long for is other. And we can say that we know that's possible, and it should invigorate all of us to hear that, right? That we may not be able to solve this, but we can do two things. We can keep holding out the hope of the gospel, and we can make much of that, and we can baptize imaginations and see God do things that seem to be impossible. And we can reduce vulnerabilities. And that's the work SAFE Alliance is doing. That's what iRISE is doing. For you right now, for iRISE, like, what are the most urgent needs? Some people who are just hearing about iRISE and they're going, okay, and I always say this, pray for iRISE, pray for Kristen now that you know her. And you're really smart, by the way, which we appreciate. Really intelligent, courageous, fighting type people in this. And so we all should be praying. So pray for Kristen, pray for iRISE. That's number one. But the other things that are most urgent right now for iRISE to take the next step towards impact, what are you praying for? What are the critical things that need to happen for iRISE?
Thank you, first of all. And I would say for us, we are at this beautiful place. I feel like I am a passionate person, and sometimes I I have vision and I want to go. I'm a person of action. And that's not God's timing all the time. So I have had to wait on a lot of things. However, I feel like for iRISE, it's God's time. I'm sensing it. And so right now we're trying to build capacity as an organization in order to meet the demand for our services. So we're looking to hire a case manager. We're raising funds to be able to add to our team so that we can take it to the next level, start to innovate more with the things that we can offer to survivors. We want to eventually start a business incubator to help women start their own businesses. We want to create more social enterprises that create jobs for women. We want to send women to school. We want to help create seed grants to start women in investing, so they're planning for their future. So many different things, and so we're working towards building our staff so that we can continue to do that. And then also, we need employers. We need business partners to come alongside us and say, hey, we want to hire your graduates. If they go through your program, we're willing to overlook their criminal record while they're working with the amazing Brent Woody to expunge their record, because we know that, they're worthy and that they're really a hidden talent population. These individuals have a lot to prove to themselves. They are dreamed to have something better. So they're going to be your hardest workers. Yeah. And they have a lot to give. And so for us, it's, business partnerships, it's additional funds to help us to build capacity so that we can also increase our numbers of individuals we serve in our programs, and we can continue to innovate and create more solutions in the economic justice space. And I love what you said about, that's so inspiring to me about, baptizing your imagination. I think if we can all look around and be like, really, is this the best we have? Right? Yeah. How do we bring heaven to earth? Yeah. You know what I mean? If we can all do that and we can figure out how to do that, we're winning. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I'm with you. I think again, we're writing this symphony based out of Isaiah, and I can't wait for that to get played. Our dream is that it would get played here at the Straz or the Mahaffey. And that's part of what is the music that's animating a city? What is the imagination culturally? What's our social imaginary as a people? What do we believe is possible in Tampa? That's the dangerous stuff. If we start thinking and dreaming like that, it won't be long before 10 years from now, we go, man, do you remember a day, right? And now our hearts have shifted, and that's possible. So, but not without a lot of prayer and a lot of hard work. So Kristen, thank you for what you're doing. I want to respect your time and do this. We've got our mugs. Christina Cruzy, our lab initiative director, did a great job in highlighting this. So we have this partnership with Buddy Brew that creates the opportunity for us to give sustainable funding through a common good, consumer good partnership. And the dream is literally this: if we all are drinking coffee, we can shift one consumer choice and go order Freedom Roast from Buddy Brew. Every time you do that, Dave and Susan at Buddy Brew direct $3 from every retail bag into the lab initiative. That creates a sustainable source of funding that we can direct to organizations like iRISE and the SAFE Alliance. So in 2026, we're going to take the lab initiative resources and direct them to the SAFE Alliance, so that you and your team can get them to the most urgent need. And I heard you say that just mental health and healthcare providing for survivors of human trafficking, that's on the top of the list. So this year and very soon, we'll make an announcement on the check that we get to cut based on everybody buying Buddy Brew coffee. So thank you for ordering Freedom Roast. Share it with friends and family. Our dream, I said 1,000 bags a month. If we sold 1,000 bags a month, that's $3,000 a month in sustainable funding that we can give out. Think if we had 10,000 people around the country buying Freedom Roast, we can get there. That can happen. And it happens like this. You just take even a clip from this podcast, or take some of our social media, share it with 10 of your friends and say, listen, I heard about this coffee, and I heard about how it provides resource to amazing things like iRISE and the SAFE Alliance. So I want to give you a mug so you can drink to freedom, is what we say. But yeah, thank you for what you're doing. And we can't wait to cut a check from the Lab Initiative to the SAFE Alliance.
Thank you.
We'll be praying for iRISE. And I want to invite everybody out there, please pray for Kristen, pray for iRISE, and take her up on what she suggested. They need resources to hire that additional staff. And this may be an opportunity that you've been praying about. It's part of what we want to do with the podcast in January is just turn a light towards organizations like iRISE, Brent Woody, these folks who are doing incredible work in these very specific spaces. So funding is needed, but also you may have the ability to turn your attention as an employer towards iRISE and build a bridge. And it may not be for today, it may be for tomorrow. So reach out and find a way to build a bridge and build an alliance with Kristen. But thank you, Kristen, for who you are and what you're doing. It's amazing.
Thank you. It's such an honor. And thank you for the amazing, beautiful work that you guys do. And so it's such innovation and imagination about how to share the gospel and the beautiful creation around us. So thank you. And thank you for the gift of caring about this and advocating and championing and then giving. It means a lot.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we always say us together. So we'll cheers to that. Cheers. How about that? All right. Thank you.